Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, mgrahamsews. This video tutorial is for this really beautiful bag. It's called the Oriana Bowler Bag by Bagstock Designs. It's a really fun sew and it's actually a fairly quick sew. I really enjoyed making this. I love the outcome. I'm still really shocked that I don't have any pleats or anything in my gusset. I just really love this bag. So before I get started telling you some of the features, just a couple things I wanted to go over. First of all, this is filmed like a sew along. So that means there's no parts that are sped up, no parts that are cut out. You see me construct this whole bag from start to finish. Now there may be times where there's something that I do 2, 3, 4 times that I don't show it every time. So I'll show you it once, then I'll go off camera and I'll complete the other ones in the same method. That's just so that this tutorial doesn't run on too long. So for example, when we do the binding and we're attaching the exterior panels to our gusset, I show you how to do one, then I'll go off camera and do the other. And same as the binding, I show you how to do one side, then I go off camera and I sew the other one on, and then I come back. Again, that just helps with the length of the tutorial because these can get really long. So if there is any part of this tutorial that you're finding is really long and you don't want to watch, you can simply fast forward through the parts you don't want to see, or YouTube has the option to speed up the video so you can watch this a little bit faster. I will admit, when you watch it in a faster speed, my voice does become a little bit crazy sounding, so it won't be as fun to listen to, but you still do have that option to watch it that way if you prefer. So it is filmed like a sew along. That's great for people who are new to sewing and want to be able to see how to construct every step of the bag. But if you're familiar with bag making and you're just stuck at a certain part, just use the tutorial how you see fit and what's going to work best for you. This is really a guide to help you create this bag and to go with the pattern, so that if you get stuck at a part in the pattern, or again, you're new to bag making, this is just here to help you. Second of all, I don't show any pattern pieces, rulers, measurements, nothing during the tutorial. I do explain this a little bit later, but again, I just wanted to give it here at the beginning of the tutorial just as a reminder, and that is because of this is done during testing, and oftentimes things change during testing, and also it's to protect the designer. So you will need to have your pattern open beside you, either printed on another device or on this device that you're watching this tutorial on, so you can follow along, know what measurements are, know what the seam allowances are, and so on. So now let's discuss some of the features of the bag. First of all, you have a crossbody strap. The nice thing about the crossbody strap is you can adjust it as tight as it can go, and you can wear it as a shoulder bag, and if you get tired throughout the day, you can then take it and adjust it and be able to wear it crossbody. Really nice to have it so that you have it hands-free. On the front of the bag, you have a slip pocket with a flap, so it closes with the flap that has a magnetic snap. There is an option for using a twist lock. I used a magnetic snap because I don't have a twist lock in the color of hardware that I chose, but you can use a twist lock, and there are steps for how to install that. The back of the bag has this zipper pocket here, which is big enough for your phone, as well as the front pocket too. So it's great because you can have your phone against your body. So say you're out traveling and you want to have your water bottle in here and some of your documents, you can have your phone secure or your wallet secure back here because this will be against your body. When you open the bag, you can see it is quite roomy, which is really nice. And I know it's hard to see, but you can see it's a pretty roomy bag. That's the base. So you will fit everything that you need inside. Inside the bag, you also don't need to have a wallet because there is some card slots here, and I'm just turning this right sides out. Hang on, I'm going to turn it so the lining is out so you can see it better. I didn't want to have to do this, but so you can see there are card slots here, right there. And there's 6 of them. So you have 6 card slots, so you can use it as your little wallet. And then you have a slip pocket here for your bills or receipts or anything else you want to put in there. There is no other pockets on here, so if you want and you're familiar with making bags and you know how to install a zipper pocket, you could add another zipper pocket inside if you want, or a little slip pocket, or anything you want. But I like to have bags like this with lots of pockets, so I tend to add more zipper pockets. Because I was filming a tutorial, I didn't add any zipper pockets. I wanted to follow the pattern as it was written. The other thing is if you don't want to add pockets, you can always add little pouches inside your bag, make a whole little cute set so that you have a nice little set. The bag closes with the zipper, as you'll see on top. You have the option to use one pull or two. I like having 2 pulls so you can open it up, and then it doesn't matter which way the bag is worn. So say I give this bag as a gift, which I most likely will, it doesn't matter which way it opens because you have those 2 pulls at the top. And again, the base here is flat, so it is a circular bag, but it's a nice flat base. I really love the shape, and it is binding, as you saw when I had the bag turned right side out. It is finished with binding. Don't let that scare you. I do walk you through how to do the binding, and there are instructions in the pattern for doing the binding. I really like binding, and the more I do it, the better I feel about it. But the other nice thing about binding, and as I say in the tutorial, is nobody really sees it. So if it's not 100% perfect, you don't have to worry because it doesn't really get seen. It's inside the bag. So don't really fuss about it too much. It does get easier the more you do it, I promise. Again, if you don't want to use a shoulder strap and you want to use it as a crossbody bag, you do have that option. However, if you don't want to make a crossbody strap and you just want one strap and you don't want to use all the extra hardware, you can make this to any length you want and just have it as a shoulder bag as well, and then you don't have the crossbody strap. Or you can make a crossbody strap and a shoulder strap, whatever you want. Really, this bag is yours. You can really have a lot of fun with it. You can make this out of all quilting cotton. You can make this out of all vinyl if your machine can handle it. You can do whatever you want with this. Just have a lot of fun with it. And honestly, it looks like it takes a really long time to make, but it doesn't. It was a really quick sew, at least I found. And again, I'm really impressed with my gusset and how there's not a single pleat or crease or anything in it. I was really happy and I'm really excited. I absolutely love this bag. So again, this is the Oriana Bowler Bag by Bagstock Designs. So let's get started making our bag. So the very first thing you're going to want to do is read through the entire pattern. This is very important because oftentimes designers give different information regarding different materials you're using and different interfacings. So sometimes depending on the materials you're using, you may need to cut a pattern piece a different size, and sometimes depending on the interfacing you're using and the material you're using, you may need to cut your interfacing differently. So it's important to make notes of this before you start cutting out all your materials so that you don't cut something that you don't necessarily maybe need to cut or you've cut it wrong. So it's definitely important to read through the pattern. It's also important because you familiarize yourself with the pattern and you familiarize yourself with the construction of the pattern that you're making so that when you get to steps, it makes a little bit more sense to you when you're starting to make the bag. So once you've read through, you're ready to go ahead and cut out all your pattern pieces and then cut out your materials. For this tutorial, I've chosen to use a vinyl and quilting cotton. So I have my vinyl here and my quilting cotton. So that's what I'm using for this tutorial. I'm also using a 90-14 needle and Gutermann all-purpose thread. Now you'll want to use materials, thread, and needle that you know that work best for your machine. As we go through the tutorial, I will give some tips and tricks for different, materials, to what you can do to handle the bulk of the materials and so forth. So that way there, if your machine struggles, you'll have a few extra little tips. I've also gone ahead and cut out all my zippers to the length that they need to be cut, and I've got all my hardware collected in this little Ziploc baggie here. And that's just so that it's all together and ready to go when I need it. I also have some binding here that I'm going to use for the pattern because this pattern is finished with binding. And I'm just using this double wide, extra fold, bias tape, extra wide, double fold bias tape here that I purchased. So I'm just using these. You can use whatever method you want. I do have a tutorial on my YouTube channel and I will link that below in the description for how I do some binding so that you can see how I do it, but you can definitely use whatever method you prefer. If you want to make your own binding, if you want to use fold over elastic and I are not friends when it comes to binding for some reason. Fold over elastic just doesn't like me, so that's why I don't use it. But if that's your preferred method, definitely use it. So use whatever method you prefer and that you're comfortable with using. This light's a little too bright in my face. So I have all my supplies and everything gathered. The other thing I wanted to note is I don't show any pattern pieces, rulers, cutting mats, no measurements, nothing on camera. And that's for the protection of the designer, but also because I film during testing. And sometimes during testing, things can change, such as a measurement for where something goes or a pattern piece. So I don't want to cause any confusion and I don't want it to affect my tutorial. So this way here, you can continue sewing with me because nothing will change or be affected by my tutorial because I haven't given any of that information. So due to that, I do make all the markings that I can before I start the tutorial. So I've gone ahead and I've marked the center on my strap, and I've made the marking for my magnetic snap here. Now that's something else I wanted to mention. When you read through, you'll see that you can use a magnetic snap or a twist lock. I'm using a magnetic snap, just personal preference. The choice is yours. They both result in the same thing, but I'm using a magnetic snap. So I've gone ahead and I've made that mark for that. And the other thing is I've made center marks on all my pattern pieces, and I also have them labeled, you can see here, with the corresponding letter that goes with the pattern piece, so that when I get to that step, I know exactly what pattern piece I'm getting to. And actually, because I've read through the pattern, as I was going through and making markings that I needed, I actually put my little pile in order for the way I'm going to need these when we get to the steps. So it's all in order of steps too, which is just done on purpose so that it's easier when I'm grabbing things off my ironing board beside me. So again, I've made those marks, and I've also made markings on pattern pieces. So for example, this one here, which is a zipper pocket, I made a mark for where the top is so that I know where the top is when I go to use this pattern piece, so that I don't orient it the wrong way and then have to rip out all my stitches and start all over again. So I do mark where the top is so I know where the top is on pattern pieces. So once you have all your materials cut, your interfacing's fused. So for example, you have some interfacing you have to fuse to the flap. You'll see I've done it here. So once you have that all done, we're ready to get started making our bag. So I'm just going to put this off to the side for now. Put it there where I can see it. Just moving my light here because I hit it. Move this over and we're ready to get started. So again, if you haven't attached your interfacing, please go ahead and do it as per the instructions in the pattern. Now I am using vinyl for my strap, so I don't have to interface it with the interfacing as given it in the pattern. So if you're using vinyl, you can omit the interfacing if you want, you can add it if you want. I tend to just leave it off when I'm using vinyl, but that's just a personal choice. So the very first thing we need to grab is our piece C, piece B, and piece D. And they look like this, and this is what is going to form the front of our bag. So you need to grab these pieces. Put piece D to the side, and we need piece B to be facing right sides up, and then we're going to take piece C and we're going to place it right sides down on top of piece B. So they're going to be pretty sides together. Now something to note is you need to ensure that you line up the bottom edges of C with the bottom edge of B. So the top edge of the C will stick up off the top edge of B. It is a bit higher, but you want to line up the bottom edges. So ensure those are lined up, and you're lining up the side straight edges here. And then you're going to sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern down the straight edge. So again, the top edge of C will be a little bit higher than the top edge of B, and that is correct. So sew these together with the seam allowance given in the pattern. And don't forget to backstitch at start and stop. So just like that, cut your threads. Now we need to flip the exterior front piece and press the seam allowance towards the C piece. So you're going to press it towards the C, so towards the middle. So just like this. Now, if you're not using a material like I am that you can press with your iron, so a quilting cotton in the center, you can press this with your iron. I can't, so I'm just pressing it with my hands, but you're pressing the bulk towards the middle, so towards C. And then we're going to top stitch on top of C to hold that bulk in place. So change to your top stitch length and top stitch on top of the middle C. Return your stitch length back to the length you use when you stitch a bag together. Trim all your little threads. And so far it looks like that. And I'm going to try and get closer, and then let's see if I can get this light. So I don't know if you can see that, but I've top stitched along on top of C here. So I'm just going to fix my focus. I don't want it to be out of focus for you. Now we need to repeat that whole process to attach the second side, so the D. So again, lining up those bottom edges, clip it in place, clip along the straight edge, and then sew this in place using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Trim your threads. Press the seam towards the middle, so towards C, just like that. So again, my bulk is pressed towards C, and then we're going to top stitch that. So I've already changed my stitch length to my top stitch length. Returning my stitch length as well back to the length I used for stitching. And there we go. This will now be referred to as our exterior front slip pocket. So now this is where you need to decide if you're using a twist lock or a magnetic snap. I'm using a magnetic snap. If you're using a twist lock, you'll want to follow the instructions for the twist lock, but I'm using a magnetic snap. So I'm going to grab out everything I need for a magnetic snap, and I like to apply a piece of interfacing behind my magnetic snaps as well, just for some extra security. And I always have a nice little bag full of extra little pieces of interfacing. I never throw them out, including foam, because you can use them for the backs of hardware for some extra security on the back. So now I'm going to grab out everything I need for this. So for the magnetic snap, there is a measurement if you're using a magnetic snap for where you need to place it, and I've already got my mark made here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my washer to make the marks for the slits for my prongs. Just like that. And another thing, if you're worried when you're using your seam ripper about making your holes for your prongs, what I often do, because sometimes I'm worried that I may slip, is, so I've made my lines, both sides, one here and one here for the washer. I go right in through the top of the first line that I made, and then I come out the top of the second line, and I'm just going to do that here just to show you. Just like that. So you see that I've gone in where the line is and out where the line is. So now when I use my seam ripper and I push through, that pin, as you can see, acts as a stopper. It protects me from going any further. I can't go past where that pin is. And I put them at the top of those marks where the marks are for the washer, because that means I'm not going to have any pinholes higher up, and my washer, or the marks, sorry, where I'm cutting up to, cut right up to that pin, so there's no extra marks. And my magnetic snap will also cover any holes because we've made the marks for the washer. So now I'm installing the female half of the magnetic snap. So I'm just going to grab out my female half here. And I'm going to install the female half of my magnetic snap. So just like that, my little piece of interfacing, my washer, and then I use my pliers and I fold my prongs in and press them down. And I just use these pliers because I find it's easier for me to push them down with the plier rather than just using my hand. And I'm going to place some tape over top of the prongs. This acts as some protection so that it doesn't rub through to the other side when I have fabric against these. And also I find it helps hold the washer in place too, or the prongs in place too, and the magnetic snap in place. It kind of just gives a little bit of extra added security. Oh, what is on the back side of this here? piece of something I'm going to have to pick off. There we go. There's a piece of, I guess when they painted it, there's a piece of the paint that sort of dripped off, I guess. There we go. So that's how that looks once you have the female half of your magnetic snap. Now, if you're using a twist lock, you'll want to follow the instruction for the twist lock. The measurement is given in the pattern, and you basically do the same thing. You make the slits for the prongs, put the prongs in, use your washer, and then add some tape to the back to help protect those prongs. Now, what we need is to grab the exterior panel. So this is called exterior front slip pocket lining, and I didn't cut mine out of my lining. I cut mine out of the same fabric. That's just a personal preference, but yours may be cut from your lining material. And this is piece E. So we're going to place piece E right sides together with this completed front pocket. Place them right sides together, pin it along this top curved edge here. And I'm going to line up my centers as well. All right, so now that I have that pinned, what we're going to do is we're going to sew this edge here, this top curved edge, with the seam allowance given in the pattern. And again, make sure you're using your stitch length that you use when you construct a bag. And you can take your time here. Now, if you're finding that you've used a thicker material and your machine is struggling to get over that bulk, what you can do is take a seam whacker or a rubber mallet, and you can hammer that seam to flatten it. You can also cut any excess interfacing out of the seam allowance to reduce the bulk, or try using a bigger needle. So if you're finding that you're getting skip stitches, switch to a bigger needle. Sometimes that often helps. And that's just a little tip for the bulk. So again, a rubber mallet, you can hammer it, and that will flatten the fabrics and compress them a bit more. Try a bigger needle. You can even try a walking foot, a humper jumper, and also using, the bigger needle, sorry. Now we need to clip the seam allowance. So we need to clip along the seam allowance. You can use your pinking shears for this, but basically you just want to make little snips in the seam allowance. And I'm going to trim these little edges here that stick up from when we sewed C to B and D. So just like that. So I've just made clips, so you can see I've just snipped it there. And we want to turn this so that they are wrong sides together, and you want to match all the three edges. So this is where you're going to want to take this to your iron, and you're going to want to press it. Now, if you've used a magnetic snap, be careful when you're running your iron over that. You don't want to demagnetize it. And I'm going to have to press from my lining side because I use the vinyl on the front. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to go press this with my iron, and then I will come back and we will top stitch this and continue on. All right, so I gave it a press, and I clipped it too just to help hold it in place, because where the vinyl is I can't really press there very well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to top stitch this curved edge here. So this top curved edge that we sewed together, I'm going to top stitch that. So change your stitch length to the length you like to use for top stitching. Oh, my thread is underneath. And then we're going to top stitch this curved edge. All the way along. So it looks like that when you're done. It's all top stitched on both sides. Now we're going to stitch these three edges, so down the side, around this bottom edge, and up the other curve together all the way around. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the middle, and I'm going to work my way up to the top, just so that I don't get any shifting. And you can change your stitch length to a really long stitch length because you're only basting these together. So you can change it to a really long stitch length. The basting just holds all the layers together so it doesn't shift when we go to attach this to the other panels. And I'm just trimming all my threads because I don't want peekaboo threads later. There we go. So that's how that looks once it's all stitched on the sides. I've stitched it all together. Don't forget to return your stitch length back to the length you used for stitching. Now you need to grab your exterior front A piece, which looks like this, and we need to place this so that it is on top. So the front A piece is right sides up, and your front finished slip pocket is going to be right sides up on top of it. So the lining side of your slip pocket is right sides together with the front or right side of your slip pocket. And I'm just going to find where my centers are, and I'm going to line them up. It's always best to line up your centers. Line up those centers, pin it in place, and that way there, I now know that this is going to be even on my panel here. Because I don't want one side to be higher than the other, I want it to be even all the way around. Add some clips. And then we're going to baste this together again on those same edges we just basted together when we attached the lining to the front. So now we're just going to start at this corner here. We're going to stitch down and around and all the way back up. And you can use a longer stitch length for this. Don't forget to back stitch at start and stop. And you can just stitch even right on top of your previous stitching too. All right. Oh, I just lost a clip in the garbage. I don't want it going in there. There we go. I'm sure I've probably lost a lot of clips to my garbage can. Trim your threads. There we go. And that is how this panel looks when completed. So we have our front little slip pocket. We're going to place this to the side for now. Now we need to grab our flat pieces. And there is a note that if you're using the magnetic snap, you need to install the male half of the magnetic snap now. So same way I installed the magnetic snap on the front, I'm going to install this the same way using my washer. And there is a measurement that is given in the pattern, which I've already marked. Now, another thing, if you want to make sure, which I like to do, is take your flap and lay it on top, lining up your curved edges, and just make sure that where you're placing your magnetic snap will line up with your magnetic snap there. So I can see my mark is here and I can see it's there and I know it's going to line up. Because sometimes if we don't sew accurately, or like our seam allowance is off, or maybe our measurements are off, sometimes this can be off a little bit. It's just human error. I've done it many times. So I just like to adjust now before I install that magnetic snap so that I make sure it is on correctly. And I'm going to use a pin as well, again, so same thing, going in through the top of the mark that I made for the prong and coming out the other side at the top. And then making those slits. And I'm going to use some fray stop because this is a cotton. So just applying it, and that'll just prevent it from fraying anymore. And then we can install our snap. Now, because this already has some interfacing there, I'm not going to apply another piece of interfacing. Actually, you know what? No, I will. I'll still apply it. Just for that extra security. just to be safe. All right, so push the male half of the magnetic snap through the slits you made for your prongs, and then the interfacing, and then the washer, and then using my pliers, I will push it down. And then some tape, just like I did previously, over that. There we go. That is all installed. Now I'm going to take my flap, my exterior piece, and I'm going to place it right sides up, and I'm going to place the lining piece of the flap right sides down. Now, if you're installing a twist lock, you're going to construct the flap first before you install the other half of the twist lock. That's only if you're doing the magnetic snap that you will install that right now, or before you put these together. You need the flap completely constructed before you install the other half of your twist lock, because you're making a hole through all the layers. Now we're going to sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern, and it says to sew the sides around this bottom curved edge. So you'll sew down the side, around the bottom curved edge, and up to the top. You're leaving this top edge here open because that's how we're going to turn this right sides out. Now don't forget to turn your stitch length back to the length you used for stitching your bag together. And don't forget to back stitch as well. And you can see the stitching here a little bit better on this side. So now I'm going to trim my seam allowance. And I'm using pinking shears for this. Thread. All right, oops. Now we're going to turn this right sides out, and just be careful, you don't want to break any stitches or anything. I'm going to use my turning tool to really help get that all pressed out really nicely. I'm using a vinyl, so I can't really take this to my iron and press it. So I'm just using my turning tool. And then what I'm going to do is, I always forget I have this, but use my roller and just roll my seams flat. I always forget I have this. I think I need to put it up on top of my cart here so I always see it. And I'm just going to go around the edges again. And then what I'll do is I'll use clips to help hold everything in place. There we go. So now that that's all clipped, what I'm going to do is I'm going to top stitch around the flap using the seam allowance given in the pattern. I'm going to start on the side, and you'll want to take your time going around. Now when you get to these curves, if you have a hard time with the curves and you can't really keep it so that you stay really straight and you can't just keep sewing while you're turning, what I like to do is With my presser foot down and my needle down, I'll then lift up my presser foot, pivot my fabric slightly, take one stitch. So now my needle is down again, lift my presser foot back up, pivot my fabric, presser foot down, and one stitch. And I will do that all the way through, but I like to go slowly unless it's a really, really tight curve. Sometimes we have really, really tight curves. But that's just if you have a really hard time getting around those curves. Like right there, I had to make a pretty big turn. So what I did was I lifted up my presser foot while my needle was down, and I pivoted it, just that small amount. So that's how it looks. I don't know if you can really tell. Yeah, you can kind of see the stitching, and I went all the way around and it looks beautiful. And the other thing I forgot to do was top stitch this top together here. And that just closes that up and holds that all together for you. Don't forget to return your stitch length back to the length you like to use. I know you're probably wondering why I say that a lot, but sometimes I forget, so it's a good little reminder to return your stitch length, because I've done it many times where I start stitching and I realize I'm using the wrong stitch length. So there we go, our flap is done. Now if you're installing the female half of your twist lock, you'll want to go ahead and follow the steps and install it now, and follow your manufacturer's instructions for installing that half. If you're done like me and you've installed the magnetic snap, we're going to go ahead and close the snap. Then we're going to find our center marks, which I can see are right there, and I'm going to line up my center marks. And I'm going to add some clips just to hold it in place, just like that. So I've lined up my center marks at the top, and that helps make my flap nice and straight. Now if you have to, now is the time to adjust. If you're finding that it just doesn't look right, now is the time to adjust before you stitch it. But if you're happy with how it looks, then we can go ahead and stitch the top of the flap. Now we're basting along this top edge, and it does say if your flap is extending beyond the top edge of your exterior front, you can trim the excess length of the flap. So don't worry if your flap is a little bit too long, you can trim it to be the same height as your panel A piece here. Mine matched up really well. I'm really happy with it. So now we have our pocket here with our magnetic snap, just like that. So we're going to put this one to the side for now. Now we need to grab our exterior zipper pocket zipper. And I know which one that is right now because I have my zipper pull on it, and I know it's my shorter zipper of all the zippers that I have. And we need to grab our zipper tabs. So there is a length in the pattern that's given for the length you need to cut the zipper. If you haven't cut your zipper to length, you'll want to go ahead and do that now. You can also backstitch a few stitches on each end of your zippers. This creates a bar tack so that you don't lose your zipper pull. Now what we're going to do is place one zipper tab right side up, and then place the short raw edge of your zipper on top, matching the right side, matching the edge of the zipper tab with the raw edge of your zipper. So just like that, raw edges aligned. So just like that. Then we're going to take another zipper tab and we're going to place it right sides down. So you're creating this little zipper sandwich. Line everything up. And then we're going to sew this together using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Trim your threads. Now we're going to flip these so that they are right sides out and they are wrong sides together like this. And we're going to top stitch the width of the zipper tape here. We're just going to top stitch where the zipper tape is. Now, if when you go to backstitch here at the zipper tape and you can't because your foot gets stuck on that zipper teeth, what I do, which is what you saw me do, so say I'm here and I can't backstitch here, leaving my needle down, I lift my presser foot up, I turn my zipper so it's now coming back towards me, and I'll backstitch that way. That way there my foot can go over the zipper teeth. Now we need to trim the zipper tab so it is even with the sides of the zipper. And you're welcome to do this with some, with a rotary cutter and a ruler. I'm doing this with some scissors. Just trim it up. And then we're going to sew those remaining 3 edges together. My chair keeps rubbing on my table and making a funny squeaky noise. So sew all the way around, and this is just holding these together, these layers again, so that they don't shift on you when we go to install this zipper. There we go. Now we're going to repeat that process for the second side. So again, zipper tab right side up, zipper right side up on top of it, second zipper tab right sides down to create this little zipper sandwich. Pin them together and then stitch them together. Oops. I return my stitch length back to the length I used for stitching. So I'll show you here, because when I go to backstitch, oh, it did let me, but when I go to backstitch, sometimes because the zipper teeth are thick or thicker, I can't backstitch. So I have to turn it around just like that and then backstitch that way. Press the fabrics so that they are wrong sides together. Top stitch. See it right here, it's happening here. So flip my fabric around and then I can top stitch that way. Trim the fabrics. Even with your zipper tape. Clip everything together and then stitch this all the way around. Oops. I went off my zipper tab there. And now trimming my threads. And that is how your zipper tape will look once you have your tabs on. And don't forget to have your zipper pull on if you didn't do it. I should have mentioned that before, but make sure your zipper pull is on. Now we need to mark the center edge of our zipper. So I'm just going to pull my pull out of the way, grab my pencil, and I'm going to do this within the seam allowance. So fold the zipper tape in half, and I like to make sure that these edges that are folded are lined up as well. The edges where we attached the tabs to the zipper, I make sure those are lined up. And then just within my seam allowance, I'm just marking the center with my pencil, and I do it within the seam allowance because I know nobody's going to see this after. So I've marked the center of my zipper tape there. I'm just going to make sure my focus stayed focused. Now we need to take the bottom H piece. Yeah, this is it. So your exterior back bottom H, and place it right side up. We're going to place our finished zipper right side down on top, lining up the center marks, and the zipper should be right side down with the zipper pull going to the left when closed. So you'll see here it's going to the left when closed. Now this really is a personal preference which way your zipper closes. Some people prefer to have it go the other way. So do what you feel comfortable with. If you want to wear your bag on another shoulder, on the opposite shoulder than what this is being designed for, go ahead and place your zipper the other way. So lining up the center marks, and all I did was folded my panel in half and lined up those center marks. Now you're going to notice that your zipper tabs will be a little bit longer than your panel itself, and that's okay, we'll take care of that after. So there it is, all clipped. Now I'm going to sew that together using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Now, when you're approaching where your zipper pull is, you'll want to zip it out of the way, just so that it removes the lump that the zipper pull causes. It can help keep your zipper nice and straight so you don't end up with a wavy zipper. And I did use a longer stitch length. That was okay because you're only basting this, so a stitch length when you're basting is okay to be longer. So there it is right there. It's attached right now, and it is right sides down. The zipper is right sides against the right side of the panel. Now we need to take our exterior back zipper pocket lining, and that's this piece. And if you remember back in the beginning when I was telling you about cutting all your materials and everything, this here I marked with a T so I know where the top is, and I also have the centers marked as well. And I'm trying to hold this so you can see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this pocket piece right sides against the wrong side of the zipper. So you're placing it on this, which is already sewn. The zipper will be sandwiched between these two panels, so you want to line up your center marks. So line up those center marks, clip it in place. And your pocket will be longer than your panel. That's okay, we're going to fix that after, but that's how it'll look right now. So you've got your zipper panel on this, your pocket on this side, and your panel H on that side with the zipper sandwiched between. So now we're going to sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern, and I need to switch to my zipper foot for this, so that I can get as close as I can to my zipper. And don't forget to backstitch, start and stop. And again, where that zipper is, make sure you move the pull out of the way so that you don't have that lump there. So I'm approaching where my pull is. I'm going to lift up my presser foot. Moved my zipper pull out of the way, and I'm going to keep stitching along. Now we're going to press both the panels away from the zipper so that they are going to be wrong sides together, and I'm just going to press this with my finger. Just because I don't want to have to get up and go to my iron. I don't want to have to pause to go to my iron. So I just pressed it with my finger, pressed it like that, and now I'm going to switch back to my other foot. I know I have a zipper foot on and I could top stitch with the zipper foot, but I just like this foot. I feel like it gives me a better top stitch, just a personal preference. So now I'm going to top stitch this along this edge here underneath the zipper. So where we've stitched these panels together, this edge here where my finger is. So I'm trying to hold this, all along this edge here, right under the zipper. We're going to top stitch that. Now if you have a dangly zipper, please do be careful that you don't hit the zipper when you're stitching long. You don't want to damage your machine. So that's how that looks right now. So you can see it's top stitched. Now what we need to do is flip this piece over, so we're now looking at the right side of the pocket, and we're going to bring the exterior back pocket lining up right sides together to match the top edge of the zipper that is not sewn to anything, and you want to match up those center marks. Now another thing you want to ensure is that your sides here of your zipper pocket stay lined up. So just like that, they're all lined up. Pin it in place. And then we're going to sew this together using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And I'm just moving my zipper out of the way for now. And then I zip it back over. I just don't want that little lump there. And I used a longer stitch length there because we are only basting it together. I'm going to switch to my zipper foot because I know I'm going to need it for this next step. Oops. Now, what we need to do is we need to baste this curved edge of the exterior back bottom with the pocket lining. So we need to baste all the way around. So I'm just going to flatten this and I'm going to add some clips just to help hold it in place. So we're basting around that curved edge. So just these two side curved edges here. So I'm going to start at the top where the zipper tab is. And just follow the curve of the panel all the way around. And you don't have to stop and break your stitches here like I did. Ooh, I don't want to lose that presser foot. All right, so I had a little issue on the side here. For some reason, this side kept shifting. So I just had it pinned and I trimmed this edge and then I re-sewed it so that it wouldn't shift on me so I could see it. It kept shifting on me and I just really wanted it to stay flat. But what would it look like is you would have it like this, and then once you stitch it down, we will trim the sides so that they are the same as the panel. So you trim it down. And then it'll look like this. So you'll have your panel will look like this once you trim everything away. And that's what you want. And I just, like I said, I had a problem where my one side here kept shifting on me for some reason. So I cut it down and then I pinned it and then I re-sewed it all together. And I didn't do that on camera because I didn't feel you needed to watch me do that and watch me fix it. So I went ahead and did that off camera. But that's what it looks like once you have those sides trimmed. Now what we need to do is grab our top G piece. So this is the exterior back top G, and we need to place it so that it is right sides down. And I didn't mark the bottom edge, so I'm going to just do that now and get that top edge marked as well, which it is there, but you just can't see it. And I'm going to write over my G there. When I put my interfacing on, it hid the marks that I made. So now we need to place this right sides down against this completed bottom back piece. And you need to line up the center marks. So it's very important to line up your center marks. So just like that, and then we're going to sew this using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Make sure you're using your stitch length that you use for stitching your bag. I just caught that I wasn't, so I just switched mine. I still had it on my basting or top stitch length. Back stitch it start and stop. Then we're going to flip this so it is right sides up, press it, and then we will top stitch that edge using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So the edge right above the zipper, that's how it's looking so far. It's really pretty. And I didn't switch to a top stitch length, so I'm going to keep going. See, sometimes I forget. That's why it's good to remind myself. Thankfully, it doesn't look too bad. No one will ever know. Well, I mean, everybody watching this tutorial will know. So there it is. Now we need to take one of our lining pieces and we're going to use it to cut and make our exterior piece here the same as our lining. And you know what? I think I just need to trim off these little wings here on the sides and I'm good. I think that's all I needed to do. Let's see. That would be awesome. So I'm going to pin it at the top and at the bottom. It's just a little bit hard to see. Oh no, I have a little bit more to trim. I'm just pinning them like this, right, wrong sides together, because that zipper in the front makes it hard to keep it flat. So you can see I've got this area here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace it so I can cut along that and then I won't accidentally cut my lining panel. Okay, let's see. So I'm going to trim this down, following that line I drew. And we're trimming from the top, not the bottom. Take your time. So I just trimmed off just the smallest amount and now it is perfect. It is all the same size. Awesome. And you really don't trim off a whole lot. So that's good. That means we had an accurate seam allowance, and there's your little pocket on the back. Perfect for a cell phone. I'll show you mine. And mine's like a brick, so it fits in there really well. Let's see about the front slip pocket too. I'm 100% sure this will fit, but let's see if I can stand up my phone. Ah, I can. I can even stand up my phone in there. How awesome is that? I'm just going to put my phone back off to the side here and clip that together. Move those all off to the side because now we are going to work on our credit card slots. So you need to grab your panel O, and this is called, let me just see, credit card slot O. And there's some markings that you need to make. Now, you'll want to mark where the top of your panel is. That's very important so you know where your marks are. So going from the top down. So you have marks to make on the right side. So you'll make those marks on the right side. Then you'll flip it over and make marks on the wrong side. I'm just going to pause the camera and make sure I did the marks right and the measurements right because it's very important in order to have this correct. And I'm also going to grab a card so that when we make them, we can test it to make sure that it works. All right, so I've checked my measurements, all is good. I just really wanted to double check. So again, from the top, you're going to make the measurements on the front or the right side of your fabric using the measurements given in the pattern for the right side. And then on the wrong side or side that has your interfacing, you're going to make those marks. Now, because I've read ahead, I went and made a mark up here at the top because we do fold this top edge down after. So I've made that mark already. So I knew when I was preparing everything, I didn't want to have to stop the camera to make that mark there. So I've already gone ahead and made that one mark there. And that's just, again, so I don't have to stop the camera to make that mark. So in these at these marks that you've made on your fabric, so the lines on the right side, they will be folding to the wrong side. So you're going to take that line that's on the right side and you're going to fold your fabric to the wrong side. So just like that. So that's the right side line, and I'm just using my nails right now to crease it, and after I will take this to my iron and give it a really good press. So all those lines I made on the right side of my fabric, I'm folding it so they go wrong sides together. So I'm folding it on that line, wrong sides together, and I'm just, like I said, using my nail right now to press it in place. You can be doing this at your iron. So again, on the right side of the fabric, I'm at that third line and I'm folding it to the wrong side. So they're going to be wrong sides touching on that line. And then we're going to take the lines that are drawn on the wrong side of your fabric and we're going to press them so that the fabrics touch right sides together. So I'm on the wrong side of the fabric and the fabric, when I fold the lines, are being pressed right sides together. So wrong side of fabric, take that line, press it together, fold at that line and press it, and then you're pressing your fabrics right sides together there. And at the final line, same thing, press your fabrics so that they end up getting folded at that line and they go right sides together. And then I'm going to show you how this looks once it's all folded. So I'm going to refold at all these marks I made. And this is how it looks. And I've already made the line down the center of my material too, which is I'm going to have to remake it once I press my fabric. But just like that. So I'm going to take this to my iron and I'm going to give this a really good press. And to get a really good press, another thing I like to do is spritz it with a bit of water, and that'll help hold it and make it really nice and crisp for me. I just really like that. I like when it's nice and crisp and gets that nice clean edges for me at the folds. So I'm going to go do that. I'm just trimming up all these little strays of fabric here on the edges. I just like to have it given a little haircut so it's nice and clean, and I'm going to go press at those marks with my iron, and then I'll come back and we will continue on. All right, so I've given that a really good press. Now I'm ready to top stitch the 3 folds here, which are mountain folds is what I like to call them. So when you're pressing and you have them all pressed, you have a mountain, then it goes down into a valley, back up into a mountain, down to a valley, back up into a mountain, and that's how I like to explain it. So these mountain folds are where I'm going to top stitch. So it's 3 of them and I'm going to top stitch all 3 of those. And you're not top stitching through anything else, just those 3 top folds. So there's 1, move the material out of the way, go to the next. And while I was off camera, I also pressed the top edge of this card slot to the wrong side, and I'll show you that in a moment, just because I didn't want to stop the camera again on you. I know you don't really notice it, but it's just less getting up and down for me. I'm just trimming all my long threads right now. All right, so now what we need to do is we need to take these folds and we need to stitch down the center and we need to stitch the sides together. So that's why I had remade that mark. I had originally had it made, but I did it with a heat erasable pen. So I'm going to clip my sides together. So all these card slots together on the sides. I'm just pinning them together so they don't shift out of my way, or out of the way, or not out of the way, but shift on me. And then I'm going to stitch the center here, just sewing over the center mark to create the slots for the cards, so right here. And then I'm going to baste the sides together. So we're going to divide the card slots, sewing from the top of the card slots to the bottom. And I'm just stitching right on top of that line I drew. And if you want, you could even sew a second row of stitching. You can just go right over that. Now we're going to baste the side edges together where the card slots are, and that's why we had those clips there to help hold it in place. Oops. We don't want anything shifting on us when we're sewing this together, so that's why we're sewing the sides as well, because you don't want those to shift on you when we go to put this into our bag. Trim all your little threads. And just like that. So that's how that looks. So right now we have them divided and you can see your card fits in. And I always keep a little, when we get gift cards and stuff, I keep them for this purpose, and also for when I'm taking photos of a wallet, I can use any of the little gift cards that I have that have been used up already, and I use them for props or use them for measuring card slots as well. So now, as I was mentioning, I already pressed my top edge to the wrong side as given in the pattern. So there's a measurement from the top edge of the card slot. So your top is, you know where the top is because the card slots go in. So you measure from the top down and make a mark, and you do that on both your card slot O and your card slot P, and you measure down from the top, and then you fold and press it. Once you have that done, what we're going to do is we're going to pin credit card slot backing P right sides together with O, and you're going to pin it together, line up your top edges, there we go. I have it all pinned together. Now we're going to sew the sides and bottom together using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So you're not sewing where that top pressed edge is, just where the sides and bottom are. And I forgot to return my stitch length. And in the corner, I like to back stitch just for some extra strength and security, because we do poke those corners out. Oops. There we go. Now we're going to trim the corners. So you're going to trim the seam allowance at the corners just to help reduce the bulk. Careful not to clip your stitches, so you'll just see I just trimmed it on an angle. Oops, I put that away without closing it. And then we're going to turn it right sides out. Use your turning tool to help poke out your corners. And then we need to go to our iron and give this a really good press. So I'm going to take this to my iron and give it a really good press all the way around, making sure I get it nice and flat. I'm just using my turning tool to flatten everything out. So I'm going to go to my iron and give it a really good press, and I'll be right back. All right, so I've given that a really good press. Now we need to top stitch this top edge here where we folded our fabrics down. So top stitch that top edge. So all along that top edge, and that closes that little opening that we had at the top as well. Return your stitch length back to the length you used for stitching a bag together, and there it is. Now we need to grab one of our lining K panels, and we need to place our card slot at the measurement given in the pattern. And I've already gone ahead and made that mark. It's right here. So you'll use the measurement given in the pattern for where you're going to place that. And we're going to place it so it is centered on our panel. And to find out the center of your panel, what you can do is take this, fold your panel in half, and create a crease by pressing it in half. And then you know your card slots where you stitched for the center here, you know that's going to be the center. So line that up with the crease, just like that. And you're lining up the crease with the center of your card slots, and the mark you made is going to be where the top of your card slots will be. Pin it in place. So just like that. So the top of my card slots lines up with the line that I made, and I have it centered. So the center of my card slot lines up with that crease I made. Now we're going to top stitch the sides and bottom edges. And for some reason, this is kind of bubbling out. So I think I'm going to pin it this way. There we go. Yeah, that's better. So backstitch at start and stop, and you really want to backstitch here because there's going to be a lot of stress in that slip pocket area because we use it so much. And if you're worried about angled stitches in your corner, reduce your stitch length to 0 and then return your stitch length to 0, sorry. Take one stitch, return it back to your stitch length and keep stitching. And that'll prevent those little angled stitches in the corner. So 0, one stitch, return my stitch length, pivot, and then continue back up the side of my panel. And I'm just back stitching a lot here. And then try my card, make sure my card still fits, because if it doesn't, now is the time to adjust, which it does. You can see they fit beautifully, just like that. And you have a nice card slot pocket, and you have a slip pocket for bills or anything else that you want to put in the back there. Now it's time to start assembling the exterior and lining. So you need to take your exterior panels, and we're going to place them so they are both right sides down. I'm just going to move that zipper into the middle. So move your zipper pull into the middle. So here's the one with the slip pocket, here's the one with the zipper pocket, and there is instructions in the pattern for what pieces go with what. So the piece without anything on it, so the lining without, no pocket, with nothing, goes on the front panel, and then the panel with the card slots goes on the back panel. So I'm going to pin these all together. Pin it all the way around. I lined up my center marks. Always get those center marks lined up. Now, the other thing you can do before you go ahead and sew this together is where those center marks are, you may want to transfer them to the right side of your panel. So I'm just going to do that now. So there's one. And you just want to do it on the right side within the seam allowance. And I'm going to do it on this side within my seam allowance. And I know I'm using pencil, but again, I'm doing it within the seam allowance. Just like here, I'm going to transfer the marks, because you want these marks later when we go to attach our panels to our gusset. And the chalk I can just wipe off my vinyl here. Didn't really line up very well. There we go. All right, so I've already got those lined up, which is what I want. And then I'm going to line up my center marks again, pin it around. Always line up all those center marks. Just make sure everything is in the correct position, facing up. Nothing will be sideways slightly or anything. So now we're going to baste these panels together all the way around, and you can use a longer stitch length for this. So we're going to baste it around the entire panel. And we've basted before on the front panel here, so you can just follow along on those stitches where you've basted the slit pocket. There's one, so you have your exterior and your lining sewn together. And then we need the second one, and again, this one we've basted as well together. So you can just stitch on top of the previous basting stitches from the sides here. Watch that dangly zipper pull. I almost hit it. Yikes. There we go. All right, so now we have that all stitched together. That's how they look. And again, if you haven't already, do mark those centers, which I've already done, and I'm going to redo them because the chalk is rubbing off a bit. There we go. Place these to the side. Now we're going to make our connector. So you have your connector, you have your interfacing on it. You need to draw a line down the center, down the entire length. I'm going to use a piece of double-sided tape, and I'm going to press the long raw edges in to meet in the center. So I could take this to my iron, but to avoid getting up and down some more, I'm going to just do this. Now I'm going to top stitch both the long edges of the connector. And then trim all my threads. Now we need to grab our hardware. So I'm going to get that out. So you need your 2 D-rings. We're going to fold the connector in half, and we're going to cut it in half. So you're going to have 2 pieces. So fold it in half and then just cut it in half. Just like that. So now I have 2 connectors. Slide the D-ring onto your connector, fold it in half so those short raw edges meet, and add a clip. Do the same thing on the other one, and make sure that those folded edges where the raw edges met are inside so you don't see them. I'm going to switch to my zipper foot because we need to stitch as close as we can to the hardware. So stitch as close as you can to the hardware here using your zipper foot. There's one. And the second one. Just like that. Trim all my little threads. And we now have our 2 connectors made. We can put these to the side for now. I see a thread that needs to be trimmed. We can put these both to the side for now, and we will move on with making our main zipper closure. And for that, we need those zipper panels. So they are called main zipper closure L. So we need the 2 lining and 2 exterior. And if you haven't already, please do add, fuse your interfacing to them. Now you'll notice I haven't added my zipper pulls yet. I'm choosing to add them after I get this all sewn. I just like it so I don't have to move the zipper out of the way so much, or the zipper pull out of the way. It just, for me, it just makes it a little bit easier, and I will add them after. And I do have a tutorial on my YouTube channel for how I add my zipper pulls, because I'll probably do it really fast, but I will show you. I use my handy zipper helper here, and that's how I add them. So what we need to do first is take our lining panel, one of our lining panels, and that's this one here, and we need to place the zipper along the straight edge, all along it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the center of my zipper. So I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to mark the center of my zipper so that when we go to attach the second side, everything will line up nicely. If you don't have the centers of your zipper panels marked, please do that now. You could just do what I'm doing, just fold them in half and mark the centers. And these ones will be fine because they're added after. Okay, so again, lining panel right side up, and you're going to take your zipper and you're going to place it right side up on top of your lining, lining up those center marks on your zipper to your panel. And the zipper is right sides up against the lining. I'm going to pin it in place, and now we're going to baste this using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So you'll baste this to the panel. And I still have my zipper foot on just because I didn't change it yet. I figure I'll probably need it, so I'll keep it on. Trim any threads. Oops. Now we need to take our main exterior panel and we need to place it right sides together with this zipper panel that we just attached the zipper to. So I clip the edges, the short edges first, and then at the centers, and I can see where the center mark is on this one. Just re-clipping because it feels like that side is not lined up as nicely. And now we're going to stitch this in place using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Don't forget to use your stitch length you use for stitching a bag together. There we go. Now we're going to press both panels away from the zipper, and I'm just going to use my nail for now. And we will top stitch around the zipper panels. I'm going to wait because I want to switch back to my other presser foot for this, so I'm going to top stitch around the zipper panels after I get the second side added so that I can change my stitch length and just top stitch all the way around, and I can also press them with my iron at the same time. That way there I get a nice press. I don't want to have to get up twice in a row. So I'm going to add the second side on camera here for you. Normally when there's two I would just do one on camera and do the other off camera, but I'm going to do the second side on camera. So again, lining right side up, zipper right side up, and line up your center marks. That's very important to make sure everything stays all even. We will baste this together. And before I top stitch too, I'm going to add my zippers because I don't want to forget to add those. So I will be doing that once I'm done pressing. So now my exterior is going right sides together. And now I'm going to sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. And then once I'm done sewing this, I'll take this to my iron, I'll give it a press, and then I'll come back, I'll add my zipper pulls, and we will top stitch the whole panel. And I dropped a clip somewhere, I don't want to step on it. So I'm going to take this to my iron and I'm going to give it a really good press, and then when I come back, we will top stitch. And the other thing I'm going to do too while I'm off after I press is we need to make sure that this is the same width as our gusset. So when you lay it down, if it's the same width as your gusset, you're good. If not, you'll want to trim the gusset evenly on the top and the bottom, which you can see mine is. Mine's the same width. But if yours isn't, trim your gusset evenly so that it is the same width as your zipper panel. So I'm going to go press this and then I'll come back, we'll add my zippers, I'll top stitch, and we will continue on. All right, so I have these panels all pressed now. Now I want to add my zipper pulls, sorry. So I'm going to use my helper and I'm going to be putting on 2 pulls. So they're going to face towards each other. So I just put them on. One on each end. And again, I'll link below in the description for how I use this zipper helper. I have a tutorial on my YouTube channel for that, and there they are. They're both on the ends. Now I'm going to top stitch all the way around these zipper panels. So starting on the end, just under the zipper. Pivot when I get to this corner, go down, went a little too far. Up this side, and I'm just going to keep going till I get to this side here. I just stitched over my zipper, and that's okay because we're going to have the connectors put there. So eventually we're sewing over it anyways. And now I'm sewing over the final side of the zipper, right under the zipper, so I'm top stitching there. And there we go. So I just went all the way around. So I've top stitched all the way around everything. So across this, down the side, across the bottom edge here, up the side, down this bottom edge, up here, and around the zipper. If you don't want to top stitch like that, you don't. You can top stitch each panel individually. I just figure it's less back stitching for me. Move my zipper pulls. Now we need to grab our zipper or our connectors. And remember, you need to measure that your zipper panel is the same width as your gusset, which mine is, so mine's good. Mine didn't change. And we're going to attach our gusset, our connectors, and we need to draw a line on our connectors. So I'm just going to go off camera and do that really quickly. There's a measurement for the line you need to make on your connectors. So I'm just doing that off camera here so I don't have to actually stop the camera. So I've made the mark on one, which I just threw it on the floor. I'm going to make the mark on the second one because I don't like to show rulers on camera. So I've made the marks from the bottom up on my connectors, and that's where you're going to line up the connector with the edge of your zipper tape here. And I'm just going to use my scissor zippers. I was trying to use my tape zippers and I knew something was wrong because they weren't cutting very well. All right, and then what we need to do is grab our connector, and at that line we made, that's where we're going to line up this edge with the connector. So it's going to line up at that edge, and you're going to center it. So get it centered. I could see a thread there. I don't know how I missed that one. That's a long one. So center your connector and line up that mark you made with the edge of the zipper panel. Ouch. And then baste these in place. So I like to start with my needle down so my connector won't shift on me. There's one. Again, needle down. That just prevents my connector from shifting on me. Trim your threads. Return your stitch length back to the length you used for stitching your bag together. And so far, that's how it looks. We have a connector on each end, and that's how you're going to connect your strap when we finally make it. So now we're going to finish the gusset. So we need to mark the centers. So, and I'm pretty sure I didn't do that on this. I was going to say I'm pretty sure I did that on this, but I didn't. It's a lie. So I'm going to fold this together and I'm going to mark the centers of my gusset. I'm going to mark the center of my zipper panel and the center of my gussets. And I'm marking within my seam allowance. And I'm going to mark on the wrong and right side. It just makes it easier for me. Just check and make sure that that's centered. Oops. Which it is. Alrighty, so now I have those all marked. Now we're going to take our zipper panel and we're going to take our gusset and we're going to place the zipper panel. Oh, that didn't stay basted. Ooh, it's only basted on one edge. The connector wasn't staying in place. That edge caught though. We're going to place our gusset, so move your zipper pulls so they're in the center of your panel. You want to be careful, you don't want them to be over here because they could get stuck in the, or caught under your needle. So we're going to place the exterior gusset right sides up and our main zipper closure over it right sides down, and you're going to pin the short edges together. So pin at the corners and then pin along the rest of the way. Make sure your D-ring is facing down away from the edge that you're pinning, and then we'll baste this in place. So baste that in place. Now we're going to take this, we're going to lay it so we're looking at the lining side right now of our zipper gusset, and you're going to take your lining gusset and you're going to place it right sides down on top of the zipper panel. So the zipper panel is sandwiched between the exterior and the lining gussets. So it looks like this. Right now I'm looking at the wrong side of my lining gusset. When I flip the lining gusset up, I see the lining side of my zipper panel, then the right side of my zipper panel, then the right side of the gusset. So you have this little gusset sandwich with the zipper panel in the middle. We're going to sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Remember to make sure that D-ring is not towards where you're sewing. It's going down to away from where you're sewing right now. I'm going to also, for extra security, sew back over that area where that D-ring connector is, just for extra security. You don't have to, but I did. Now we're going to repeat that for the other side, and it's going to be a little bit tricky, but we can do it. So open it up so that it looks like this. You have this long piece like this. So this, I'm looking at the right side of my exterior and the right side of my lining here, but my zipper gusset is still, or my zipper panel is still with the lining side up. Pull the edge of the zipper gusset to meet the edge of your exterior gusset. So those raw edges meet. So they're still going right sides together. Again, make sure that D-ring is down and see how I have them right sides together. Nothing's twisted. It'll look like this. You'll have like a little loop down there. Then we're going to sew this again, same way we did with the seam allowance given in the pattern. You're just repeating all the steps, but you already have one side already attached. Now we're going to take the lining and bring it up. So lay this flat, bring your lining up to meet this edge here. Make it so the short raw edges align. Line it all up, clip it in place, and then sew this together using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Again, make sure that D-ring is away from where you're sewing, pointing into the center of the zipper panel. And I'm just stitching back over that D-ring tab area. So now we have a piece that looks like this. So your zipper panel is in the center and your lining and exterior create a ring. Now we're going to turn them so they are wrong sides together, the two gussets. Turn them so they are wrong sides together, and you're going to press the panels. So I'm just pressing with my finger, and you're going to top stitch both seams here. The seam where we connected the gusset to the zipper panel, we're going to top stitch those seams. And I'm just really going to give mine a press. You can take yours to your iron if you've used a material that you can press with an iron. I haven't, so I need to just something felt weird there. Maybe it's in my head. So there's one side done. Now we're going to repeat that for the second side. Done that side. Trim your threads. Now we need to baste the gusset, lining, and exterior right sides together, or wrong sides together. So I'm just going to add some clips all the way around because we're going to baste these. We want them to stay together because when we bind the bag, we don't want these shifting on us. And I mean, we're almost done. We just, after this, have to construct the bag and make the strap. And then we're done. We've gotten so far along. All right, so now we're going to baste these together, and you can keep this with a long stitch length because it is a basting stitch. It is a basting stitch. And you know what? I'm going to actually turn and do this from the lining side because I just feel like it's better that way. And then the second side. All right. Now trim all your threads. If you have any threads that need to be trimmed, so you need to give your panel a haircut, go ahead and do that. I often have to. We don't want any of these threads peekabooing on you later. Giving it a little haircut just so that I don't have these long threads later to deal with. There we go. So there's our exterior zipper panel attached to the gusset. I'm just making sure my centers are marked. Can't really see that. Go. Now what you can do if you have them is you can add some rivets to the D-ring connectors here. So I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to add my rivets and then I'll come back and we will continue with the final assembly of our bag. All right, so I've installed those rivets. That's how it looks with the rivets installed on both sides. If you don't have rivets, you can use Chicago screws. If you don't have either of those, you can just do a little box here and make an X in it, and then you have that extra security, which is what the rivet offers. It offers a little bit of decoration, but it also offers that bit of extra security here to the connector. So now we're going to turn our connector so it is our gusset, sorry, so it is lining sides out, and we're going to grab our two exterior and lining pieces that are put together. So we'll start with the one with the flap. That's what it shows in the pattern. It doesn't really matter. It's going to be the same thing because our zipper, I'm using a double zipper. However, if you're using a single pull zipper, you may want to choose which one you want to put on first, depending on which way you want your zipper to open and close when you wear your bag. I have a double pull, so that doesn't really change anything for me. So I'm going to line up my center marks at the top here. So I'm just pinning the center marks. And I'm just going to read. It says, continue pinning the edges, ensuring there is equal distance between the top edge of the front of the slip pocket here and the gusset seam on both sides. So your gusset seam here and the top edge. You want to make sure that they're going to be at the same distance so your bag sits the same way. And she says to refer to the picture below. So I'm going to keep pinning and then I'm going to check and see if it does in fact have the same distance once I get it all pinned. So between the slip pocket seam and the gusset seam. And it looks like I will. You could even take a ruler and measure it if you want to be extra sure. But I'm just eyeballing it right now. And it looks good. Mine looks good. So you can see the distance between the slip pocket seam, which is right here, and my gusset is the same on both sides. And I'm just going to keep pinning all the way around. Getting it nicely and evenly distributed. And this really should fit perfectly if you've used all the accurate seam allowances. Like, I'm not even trying to get this. I'm not pulling, I'm not having to do anything. It's awesome. So if you've used accurate seam allowances, your gusset will fit just perfectly. And I do like that we fused our interfacing to our lining, because sometimes I find my interfacing gets all wrinkled from turning everything right sides out, so it wrinkles my material. So I like that it's on the lining, because then I don't have to worry about those creases or wrinkles that your interfacing can sometimes cause from turning things right sides out, or, you know, sewing and moving things around. So keep pinning your gusset all the way around. And I'm adding lots of clips because I want to make sure nothing moves. And another thing I'm going to do is use my extension table. So I'm going to grab out my extension table just so that my bag doesn't want to fall. So here, the weight of it, it'll naturally want to go towards the table. This will help keep it nice and flat for me. And now we're going to sew around the entire edge using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So I'm going to start at the bottom here, and I'm going to sew around this entire edge using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Thought my presser foot wasn't down for a moment. That just went a little too smoothly and I panicked. Another thing on the curves, to make sure that everything stays nice and straight and flat and you don't get any puckers, is you can make little snips within the seam allowance along your curves. But honestly, I don't feel like I need to do it with this one because everything just seems to be going together so perfectly and beautifully. So keep going all the way around. I can't believe how nice this is going. That's good. Now, we're not trimming this seam allowance at all. You're keeping your seam allowance exactly how it is. Don't trim anything. And let's see. Now we're going to unzip the zipper. You can just leave it zip if you want. I like mine zipped. And we're going to repeat to sew the other exterior to the gusset. I was just checking to make sure we weren't doing the binding just yet. I didn't want to tell you to do something wrong. So pin the center marks. I just can't believe how nicely that went together. It's crazy. And this is the time too where you want to check for any puckers. So if you can see that there's any puckers, which seriously, there's none. I'm kind of shocked. I feel like I just performed a magic trick or something. Wow, there's not a single pucker. I think that might be the first time ever that I haven't had a single pucker when I've done like a round bag. Well, maybe not ever, but oh my gosh. So just keep pinning. And you're going to notice this back one here, again, the zippers, the zipper pocket doesn't quite meet where the lining gusset is. So the bulk kind of is away from each other. Which is good. And I think there's something going on here. These aren't quite, maybe it's right there. Let me see. Oh no. I think we're good on this side. I'll continue pinning and then I'll check because I want to make sure it's even as well, that back zipper pocket. Sorry, sometimes I have my thoughts out loud a little bit and I'm probably confusing you. But I'm just checking my pocket to make sure it's also even, that back pocket with the gusset. And then I'll add more clips when I'm done. Checking it. All right, so let's just see. So the gusset, appears that this side, okay, so this is not even, so I'm going to fix that. Somehow it got shifted. So it appears that this side is lower, the gusset, than on this side. So I need to shift that. So that means my center marks might be off on my panel just slightly. So let's see if I get this right now. I'm just going to pin this top part first and then see how it looks, and then I'll worry about the bottom just to make sure. It's worth taking the time so you get a nice, beautiful bag. And for some reason, this zipper pocket doesn't want to play nice. All right, let me try this again. Sorry about this. And I'm going to fold these. I'm going to just make sure that my center marks is where I have them on my panel here. Yep. Maybe it's just me. Yeah, everything's right. Okay. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pause the camera while I pin this and get this all done, and then I'll sew it off camera because you don't need to see me doing all of that. And then I'll come back and we will attach our binding because that's important for you to watch. But basically what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to get my zipper pocket to be even on both sides of my panel here, so that they sit level and I don't have any wonkiness, I guess you could say. Hang on, let's see if I got it here, and maybe I don't have to stop the camera. I think I got it. Yeah, I think I got it this time. Hang on. Yeah, I got it this time. Alrighty. It looks like I've got it. Never mind. So we don't have to stop the camera. We can keep going. Seeing as... But you know what? I will go off camera to do the rest because you don't need to sit here and watch me sew this second side. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to keep pinning this, and then I'm going to sew it the exact same way we sewed this first side, and then I'll come back and we will do our binding. Okay, so I have that second side attached. Now we need to do our binding, and you can use whatever method you prefer to use for binding. I'm going to do the method that I like. So I'm just going to get my binding. I'm trying to find it here in my cart mess and see if this one will fit all the way around. So I'll show you how I do one side of binding, and then I'll go off camera and I will do the other side. So I just want to see if this will go. It does, just enough. All right, so for my binding, what I like to do is using some double-sided tape, starting at the bottom, and I'm just going to give this, again, a little haircut because I don't want these little pieces poking out when I have my binding. And again, don't trim your seam allowance. You want that to stay how it is. And I used to be afraid of binding. I used to not like binding until I started doing it the way I do it now. And now I just find it's so much easier for me, so much better. And I just find I get a really nice clean binding. And I mean, binding is also in your bag. Nobody really sees it. So you don't have to worry about it if it's not perfect or stitching or whatever. I try to use a thread that does match the binding so that you don't see the stitching quite as much. But again, nobody really sees the binding because it's in the bag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from this side here. So this side is the side I usually put against the bed of my machine. So the panel side. I'm going to apply some double-sided tape all around the edge. I like binding too because it acts like a skeleton and it helps hold the shape of the bag. I'm just going to close this. Just find it sinking into itself too much. So going all the way around the entire bag. Just make sure my tape is pressed in place. Then I'm going to remove the paper backing just a bit, and I'm going to take my binding and open it up. It's already pre-folded, so I'm just opening it up, and I'm taking that center crease of my binding and I'm placing it along the edge of my bag, so along the seam allowance edge, and I'm just folding it over as I go, and that covers that side, and the double-sided tape helps hold the binding in place. And again, whatever method you have for doing binding, please do use that, because it's whatever works best for you. I just found that this method is what works best for me. It helps me get a really nice binding. I prefer it. There is a method written in the pattern. You can definitely use that method if you've never done binding before and you would rather have written instructions, or if you just never tried that method and you want to try it this time. Do what works best for you. Everybody has things that work for them, that's different for them. Some like the binding this way, some don't. So as you can see, I've gotten it stuck down all the way around, and that center seam is where my seam allowance hits. So the seam allowance is hitting right there. So that raw edge is hitting right there in that seam. Now I'm going to trim my binding because I don't need it to be that long. I'm going to open up where it's folded, and I'm going to create a new fold. So fold it down because I don't want raw edges. And then I'm going to refold where it was folded before, just like that. And then I'm going to open it back up, and I'm going to lift up this binding here, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky, but you can do it. I might have pressed that a little too far, so I'm going to redo that. So open up this binding that I have here, because I want to wrap this binding around it, making sure it stays nice and tight. Wrap that binding around it, just like that. So there's no raw edges. Now that raw edge is enclosed on that side, and I'm just going to put a clip, and we'll deal with the other side when we get to it. Now I'm going to flip this over, and again, that edge right there, I'm going to tuck it into the binding, place a clip, and now all I have to do is sew all the way around. I can go in and I can add some double-sided tape here. Instead, I'm just going to put some clips all the way around. Sometimes I'll add some extra double-sided tape just to be sure that this side gets held down, but I'm just going to add some clips. Just make sure you're covering the stitch line from the stitching before, which I am. And this is where you can have fun with your binding. You could make your binding so it is nice and vibrant and it stands out when you look inside your bag. Or you can do what I did, which I just use a binding that matches my bag so that it blends in a little bit more. You can make your binding match your bag, so you use the same material that you used for your lining so that it matches exactly. As I mentioned earlier, fold over elastic. We're not really friends, so I never really use fold over elastic. I keep trying just to see if I'll get it one day, and if I ever do, I'll definitely share my tips for that in another video so that you can see how I did it. For now, I just buy my pre-made binding and I do that. Now we need to sew the binding down. So you're going to stitch the binding in place. Take your time here. And if your machine struggles with all this bulk, you can use a bigger needle and also use a hammer or your seam whacker to hammer the seams flat. You can also use a stiletto here to help hold your binding in place as you're coming around. Sometimes I just grab my scissors and I use my scissors because they're pointy, rather than trying to search for my stiletto. So just keep going around. The area you may have the most difficulty with is the area where the zipper pocket and gusset are, because it's kind of bulky there. I'm at the top now. Just keep making sure that you're keeping your fabrics nice and flat. Just going to tie my hair back. Presser foot is sliding away from me. Or my foot pedal, I mean. All right, so I've came back to where I started, back stitched, and this is where you get to turn it over and take a look and make sure you didn't miss any areas for stitching. If you did, you can just go back over it. You can even hand stitch it down. Looks like I got it all. So we're good. Now I'm going to repeat that process for the second side, and I'm not going to do that on camera because you just watched me stitch that one side of my binding, but it's the same thing for the second side. I'm going to trim the little loose threads here. I'm going to add my binding, then I'm going to bind it, and then I'll come back and we will create our strap. So I'm going to go add the second side of binding, and then I'll come back and we will continue on. All right, so my binding is done. I have turned my bag right side out, so you can see there's my binding all done. And again, if your binding isn't beautiful and perfect, it doesn't matter because it's inside the bag and really no one's going to see it. So don't fuss over that too much. Trust me, the more you do binding, the easier and better you get. And I honestly can't believe that I don't have any puckers at all. Like, I'm still in shock that there's no puckers. So I'm going to put this to the side. I'm just kind of pressing it out. The binding sort of acts like the skeleton. It helps hold the shape of the bag and everything, which I really like. That's why I'm sort of liking binding more and more as I go in my bag making journey. I just find it really helps hold the shape really nicely of the bag. So there it is, and it's actually quite a large bag, which is nice too. So I'm just going to put this to the side because now we need to make our strap, and depending on the type of strap you are making, this may be a different process for you. Now I'm using vinyl for my crossbody strap, so there are instructions if using vinyl. And there's instructions for using quilting cotton. I do have a tutorial on my YouTube channel, which I will link below, for making straps and handles, and I use quilting cotton for that. So I won't go into explaining quilting cotton, but it's pretty much the same method as this. I'm also going to be using strap ends, so I don't need to worry about finishing my ends. However, if you're using quilting cotton, or if you want it to be finished on the ends and you don't want raw ends, if you're using vinyl, you press the raw ends in, given the measurement using the measurement given in the pattern, and then you draw a line down the entire length of the strap in the center. And then I'm going to use some double-sided tape because we're going to press those long raw edges into the center. Now, when we're making straps, you don't want to press the long raw edges into the center to touch, because you want to have a little bit of a gap so that when we fold it in half again, the edges don't cause any bulk in the center and kind of make it look not as nice. So you're not going to press them right into the center. So I've just removed the paper backing, off my strap, or the backing of the double-sided tape, and I'm pressing these into the center, but not quite to the center line, just a little bit away from the center line, and then pressing it down just all the way along. And if your double-sided tape is thick like mine, you can use just the one strip, or if you have a thinner double-sided tape, you can run 2 strips down the middle, along the middle. Now I'm going to repeat that for the other side again, leaving that small gap in the center. All the way down. Just like that. Just like that. So now your edges meet in the center, and there you go. You can see I have a small gap in the center. Now I'm going to apply some more double-sided tape because I just find that I don't want my vinyl to shift, and I find the double-sided tape helps hold it in place. And I'm just placing it in the center of one of these folds so that I don't stitch over it. Grab my hardware here. And then I'm going to fold this in half again so that, so that the folded edges meet, and you have a strap that is now half the width of that first fold. So you can see here, I'm just folding it all into to meet, so these folded edges here meet. Just like that. Now I have a strap that looks like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to top stitch both the long edges of the strap using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Now to avoid that twisting that you get when you have a strap, I'm going to come back up to the side I started on previously when I top stitched, and start on that side to top stitch the second side. I'm going to trim my threads, all the threads. There we go. I'm just going to move my machine out of the way because I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to grab all my hardware out. And I'm going to grab my tools because I am going to install my strap ends. Now, I know she has us install the strap ends after we have our hardware on, but I like to do it before just because I have a hard time trying to hold everything and maneuver. So I'm going to add my strap ends now. Oops. just going to add these now. A little dab of glue. Always use a little bit of glue. Slide this into the chamber of the strap end. Screw in the screw, and I'm doing one side at a time just so that once this is done this side, I can go ahead and do the other side and make sure that they're both facing the correct way. So I need to keep going with this. Make sure that they're the same way. Go. So I need that to be on this side. I really like how this rose gold hardware looks with the green here that I've chosen. I have an extra screw, so I'm just going to put it back in the Ziploc bag. Now, when we make our strap, you can choose to sew or rivet. I'm going to rivet it, so I'll show you how to add the hardware, and I'm going to rivet it off camera, and then I'll come back and my strap will be attached to my bag, and then I will show you the bag and how it looks once it's all completed. And this little toolkit here, my husband got this for me at the dollar store. Handy little toolkit. It has your flatheads, your stars, so it's a really handy little tool. So I need one of my sliders, and I'm using a wide mouth slider because I'm using vinyl, so I'm just going to see if I do need it or not, which it feels like I do. Sometimes I can get away with a regular slider. Yeah, I'm going to need the wide mouth. Oops, sorry about all the noise. Alrighty, so you take your slider and you slide it on one end of your strap. So I'm just going to show you. You can see even with my hardware on, I can, oops, what did I do here? Even with my hardware, I keep trying to go crooked. Even with my hardware on, I can slide it on. So hardware, take your slider, slide your strap through the slider, and then you're going to go over your metal bar and back down. So it'll look like this. And I'm over the metal bar. And she has a measurement in the pattern for how far you're going to place that. So you're going to place it there, add a rivet, or sew I mean, or add your rivet. Then take your strap and with it so that the wrong side of the strap, and by wrong side that means the side that when your strap is folded and being used, it's touching each other. So when I go to fold this up after I put my slider or my swivel hook on it, these are the pieces that are touching. So I know the wrong side of my strap because I have a strap end here, and that's the wrong end. So I'm going to slide my hardware, my swivel hook, onto my strap, just like that, and then bring this loose end up to my slider, push it through the slider, up over the middle bar again, and back down. So now it looks like that. And then with this wrong side up again, so the slider is now against the table. I don't see my slider, it's on against the table. I'm going to slide the second side of my strap through my swivel hook and then fold it around the swivel hook just like that, clip it in place, and you can sew or add a rivet. So I'm going to go off camera, I'm going to add rivets, and then I'll come back and we will finish up. So there it is. I've used rivets to attach my strap. You can see the rivet here. So if you don't have rivets, you can use Chicago screws, or you can sew this, and you can even sew a little box with an X in it to make it more secure. That's just your choice if you have rivets or if you prefer to sew, or even if you have rivets and you just want to sew it just to make it quicker, you can definitely sew this. So there you have it. Strap is attached. Our Oriana Bowler Bag is all done and it's ready to be taken out and shown off to the world. But before you do, don't forget to take some photos and post them on social media using the hashtags that are given in the pattern. I hope you enjoyed sewing along with me and maybe picked up a few tips and tricks along the way. Thank you for sewing with me. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.